Khabib and Justin Gaethje. Guys, there's a few things to unpack here, which is, first off, it does not appear there's going to be a screw job. I mean, that was a very real conversation going into this fight, right? I mean, it's very real when everything that you're hearing from the top coming down is it's going to be Conor versus Khabib. So when you hear it's going to be Conor versus Khabib, but then you find out you're doing an interim championship, and you believe that the interim champion goes on to fight the undisputed champion, those two just don't go together. So you have to start scratching your head and going, wait a minute. Are we getting ready to run a screw job here? Are we going to do an interim championship and then all of a sudden one day make believe that didn't happen and bring Conor in? That's real. One thing about the interim championship, I'm one of the guys that loves the interim championship. I think more of you are starting to come to my side, but not everybody. There's a big resistance. A lot of people don't like it. You saw Justin Gaethje himself take that belt off and throw it aside. I didn't love that moment. Justin Gaethje earned that belt. I don't care. And this is a competitor in me, and I'm as cold-hearted of a competitor as they come. I do not care what words you put in front of world champion. I don't care if you undisputed, lightweight, heavyweight, middleweight. I'd give a damn. WBA, WBC, UFC. I don't care. If it follows with world championship, that means something. That's got to mean a lot. The history books are going to reflect that forever. Justin Gaethje can take that thing off and throw it off all he wants. You cannot talk about Justin Gaethje for the rest of Justin Gaethje's life without calling him a world champion, which is exactly what he is. Now, I only bring that to you because as much as I love the interim championship, and the interim champion didn't love the interim championship, one thing about it, though, we are going to fiercely adhere to the rules of the interim champion that we make up on the spot. I get that. That's the only part I don't like about it. I just don't like that part about it. Look, it has to mean something. It means something to me, and I didn't even win the damn thing. He did. But I don't want for one of those guys who won it to then not very clearly be offered the undisputed title. Now, you can't make a guy sign if somebody wants to get squirrely in the back. Look, the show must go on is still the golden rule, but he's got to be offered, doesn't he? I think I'm not being unreasonable in the least by saying that, and it did look as though, man, are we getting ready to pull one on Tony or Justin here? Are we getting ready to? Well, we have the answer to that. No, absolutely not. It's going to be Khabib and Justin, and this one is interesting, guys, and you don't need to give a prediction, and I don't need to give a prediction, right? We're a long ways away from that. We've got training camps. We got to come up with a date. There's a lot of moving parts before we hedge our bet, but when you're going into a fight, it's all about perception, right? It's all about perception. And ultimately, if you're talking about getting somebody to part with their money, not only for their time to watch the fight, but many people are handicapping these things. They're betting on these fights. So when you're doing it, your perception, the perception of this fight is extremely fascinating. Khabib has won every single fight he's ever won by taking you down and mauling you. Now, to make believe that Khabib does not have a plan B should he need it would be silly. But to bring up the fact that Khabib has absolutely won every single fight the same way, which is he takes somebody down and then mauls them, is fair. Justin Gaethje has never been taken down and mauled. That's just never happened. So when you're closing your eye and you're trying to see in your mind's eye how this fight is going to play out, to make believe that you could envision that Khabib dumps Justin and then just mauls him and keeps him there like a fool is a little bit tough of a conclusion to come to based on each's history. If you were to come away and believe that Justin can stay on his feet and Justin is the dominant striker on his feet, I would agree with that perception. Does that mean that's a reality? I don't know. I don't know about that. Khabib's ended up on his feet twice against his will. Twice. Conor was very hard to take down. Khabib used a lot of energy, stayed on his feet. This is coming on the heels of Conor just going 30 minutes with the greatest boxer of all time and Floyd Mayweather. Khabib put Conor down. It was a big moment that nobody knew was coming. Nobody knew that Khabib had that level of power. That he had that big right hand. We just didn't know. You don't know anything until you know it. Khabib also ended up stuck on his feet with Al Iaquinta. He took some heat for that. Even Joe Rogan was saying that his stand-up looked amateur. I'm using a quote. That's not what I saw. Al Iaquinta is not a guy that you want to be stuck on your feet with, and Khabib got the best of it. So I don't know that I fully agree that Khabib's stand-up isn't there. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about perception. I believe that we would perceive Justin to be better on his feet. And if we cannot concede that Khabib can take Justin off his feet, all of a sudden, you're picking Justin. I mean, all of a sudden, that's just where you're left. Just by default, just by process of elimination, you're back on Justin. I mean, those words have never been spoken. Khabib has never gone into a fight in a meaningful period of time where he was not the favorite. To take you back to the night he fought Conor, when that went off, Khabib was a 2.5 to 1 favorite. Now, at one point, he was a 4 to 1 favorite, and then Ireland flew into town. And I'm talking about Las Vegas, and Ireland just blindly bet on their boy, and it moved the line, but it still didn't get any closer than 2.5 to 1. I will predict for you right now that if Khabib is to fight Justin, and we're just based off of perception, Khabib will be the favorite, but I will bet you it'll be a minus 180. For any of you that don't handicap, to put that in terms for you, that's less than 2 to 1. I mean, those are pretty damn good odds, and that would be very complimentary to Justin's ability to go out there and compete with Khabib. One of the intangibles that you have to deal with when you're dealing with Khabib is his pace. He is one of the few guys, the Randy Couture's, the Dan Gables of the world, the George St. Pierre's, who can weaponize pace. He can make that every bit as intimidating and scary. He will make an opponent wonder, can I be here at the end of the fight? That is 100% where a fighter's confidence comes from. It's not from who's faster, or who's got the better record, or what the reach is, or who the youth, or who weighed more than the other one. That's all talk for the media. All a fighter wants to know is, do I believe in my heart that when the end of the night comes, I can still be here? Can I be here more present than he is? If the answer is yes, you are now confident going into a fight. That is the one and only thing that it comes down to. And when you're dealing with somebody like Khabib who can weaponize pace, it is a very real question. However, if we're left with history to be our trajectory for the future, guess who else has that same ability? Tony Ferguson. And the answer for Justin was yes, I can be here at the end of the night. Now, there was many things that happened within that Tony fight that I believe Justin himself will rework over time. I believe he will rework the story to say, this is why my energy was able to be extended. This is what I did differently in this fight. This was my strategy, and I credit the great Trevor Whitman, his coach. I believe that is how Justin will tell the story. He's not being candid. Justin surprised himself. There were things that happened in that fight that were not meant to happen, that was not in his mind's eye, and were not strategized in the least. A couple of those things where he did not use a lot of extra movement. He waited, he stood his ground, he let Tony do the distractions, let Tony do the movement, he waited for Tony to come to him, boom, boom, and he cracked him hard, and then he got out of the way. That is not something Justin has ever done in the past. Justin will hit you and then stand there and let you hit him back, and then it's his turn again, and it's your turn again. Justin, for whatever reason, got his licks in and got the hell out of the way and didn't take the damage back. That is something that if he can identify and he can take with him into the Khabib fight and beyond, is going to change Justin's career. It's going to change the outcomes of the contest and is going to extend his career by 36 to 48 months. My fear is that Justin is going to rework the story like everybody else. I see guys do this in business all the time. You'll get some guy that stumbled into some business, he had an idea, he raised the capital, he executed fairly well, his business turned around. He will then come out 10 years later and write a book and say things like, I knew if I did this, and I knew public perception, and I knew the psychology of my consumer. He'll rework everything instead of just saying, man, I put myself in a good situation. It turned out that this worked. I had a really good team behind me. They kind of overperformed and everything came together. That's the real truth on when a business works. But nobody wants to say that. They want to take the credit. They want to take this victory lap. And Justin, who's as humble as they come, is going to pass that to his coaches. He just is. I would do the same thing. I will do the same thing, but I want Justin to be cognizant up here that that's not what happened. He went out, he had a performance. In many ways, he overperformed. In many ways, he surprised himself. But if he was to look back as to what happened physically that was different in this contest than others, he didn't waste energy, which meant every time he had to crack, he had the power. There was no peppering shots. There was no measuring a guy. You guys will hear that I'm measuring a guy. No, he didn't measure. Boom, boom. And then he got out of the way. That's what happened. He hit Tony. He didn't get hit back. That's what happened. And if he goes into a fight with Khabib, and I've talked about this to you guys till I'm blue in the face, If you go and break down Khabib, and this meant as a huge compliment to Khabib, but it's also something an opponent has to study and observe prior to going into the contest. If you can keep your back off the fence, your chances of beating Khabib go up immensely. Because your chance of being taken down drops to almost zero. Khabib simply does not take guys down in the center of the cage. Period. Plain and simple. Khabib pushes you up against the fence. One of the hardest places to take a guy down is up against the fence. Having your back on the defense is a defensive mechanism. It is good for the guy being attacked in a grappling situation. It is not good for the offensive guy. So that's where I say it's a compliment to Khabib. The mere fact that he can do this and have success with it is shocking. He is a master of a position that nobody has even considered trying to master. Khabib, in many ways, takedowns against the fence is the John Danaher of that position. John Danaher has the Danaher Death Squad. He is training guys like Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan and Nicky Rod. I go on and on. Nicky Rod and all these different guys. But what those guys are doing under the Danaher Death Squad is 5 and 7 years ahead of what the rest of the world's going to do. It's going to take the world 5 years of studying tape and flying out to New York and getting private lessons just to find out the offense that John Danaher is doing with these guys. It's then going to take them 2 years to develop a way to stop it. He's literally 5 and 7 and possibly a decade ahead. If he stopped right now, did not advance one bit, John Danaher is roughly a decade ahead. Khabib is the same way, but against the fence. It's very relevant. I keep saying this, but it's relevant because you're talking about Justin Gaethje, who is a Division I wrestler. So many people. I was in a conversation with my friend Ryan earlier, and he said, Chael, I watched all your videos. I've heard you say 100 times, the right answer to any question at 155 pounds is Justin Gaethje. If you hear there's a question, there's a problem, there's an issue, who should fight who, what are we going to do here, who's the right guy to put in, and it's 155 pounds. Just throw the card on the table. Justin Gaethje. He said, I've heard you say that. I never knew why you said it. I didn't get it. I didn't get Justin Gaethje. I thought he was just like everybody else on the roster. He's tough, he's durable, he likes to fight. There's a little bit more to Justin Gaethje, though. There is a little bit more. And a lot of the more comes from us that have known him for a period of time and know that he's a Division I All-American. And I have to keep going back to that because the son of a bitch won't wrestle. He refuses to. Fine, we're just going to have to accept it. But we also know he has that skill. And if push comes to shove, he can pull that ace out of his sleeve. The other side of that, whether Justin goes out there and wrestles or not by your eyes, he wrestles every match. He wrestled Tony Ferguson for 23 minutes and 41 seconds. And before you say, Chael, they never grabbed a hold of each other, how do you say that? Tony Ferguson never changed elevation and shot on Justin Gaethje. And the reason he didn't do that was out of respect to Justin's past and his resume. Tony Ferguson knew this guy's the real deal. It's going to be very hard to take him down. Nobody's ever taken him down, and therefore we're just going to have to go to plan B, which is punches and kicks, and should we end up on the ground, I might be on bottom, but I can out-scramble him. This was Tony's strategy. Not a bad strategy. I don't disagree with it at all. I don't disagree with it even in hindsight. I don't disagree with it because I do not believe that Tony could have taken him down. But when you talk about Justin's ability to stay on his feet and not getting taken down and the respect that guys have for him because they've done their homework and they know what his past is, it does lend you perception-wise to believe that Khabib is not going to be any different, and Khabib will also be stuck on his feet with Gaethje. Whether that's true or not isn't the point right now. The perception that that is true is what starts to make this match interesting. And when Dustin Poirier came out, and Dustin Poirier has earned the right to an opinion, and when Dustin Poirier has shared the cage with both Justin and Khabib and comes out and tells the world Justin is the harder fight, you have to listen to that. It's very rare that somebody will share the cage. Somebody of Justin's level, a world champion, somebody of Justin's caliber will share the cage with Gaethje, Khabib, Conor. You have to listen to what he says. Is he right? Is he wrong? Time's going to tell that, but you have to listen to it. That's all we're discussing now. The fun part of this whole thing isn't when they get in there, guys. That's the disappointing part. Then it's over. The story's over. You ever read a good story or watched a movie that you loved or even played a video game that you were really into, but then you get to the end and there's almost a letdown. You lost a friend. You lost something. You got to go find something else. You got to go cling to something new. That's what happens when the fight's over. Right now is when we get to have fun. The fun part is speculating. The fun part is talking about it. And when you're talking about it and you're speculating, you're coming to a perception. The perception that Justin Gaethje can, not will, can beat Khabib is very real.